checkered flags on these streets. Nothing has been able to stand between Little Al and Victory Lane at Long Beach. He has left many competitors in his wake. And he comes here now in search of his 5th consecutive win. Michael Andretti. Last year, he drank from the PPG Cup as the IndyCar champion. But this season has begun with only 1 pole and 6 PPG points. Michael has pushed himself and his car and captured his 3rd straight pole through the concrete canyons of Long Beach. He has memories of a terrifying pit crash that ended last year's run. But now he has a new Ford engine and needs to get his season back on track. Eddie Cheever is walking tall after a career-best second-place finish last week at Phoenix. He, too, is one of the Ford few and hopes to ride the momentum of his Phoenix performance. Looking now for his first ever IndyCar win. It's Ford versus Chevy power and Unser versus the field, as the IndyCars are ready to challenge these mean streets in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. The IndyCars set and ready to go racing, already rolling on the circuit, heading for the final corner on now what is a shortened circuit, only 7 turns, 1.59 miles around. That's Michael Andretti that has the pole, and Danny Sullivan outside the front row, with Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. in the second row. The green flag comes out, and we're racing in Southern California as they scream down Shoreline Boulevard and head for the very first turn. It's Michael Andretti still in front. Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. come up to challenge. Already, and Danny Sullivan drops back.
Already a substantial move by Al Unser Jr., who has won the last 4 races here. He's now running second.
Danny Sullivan, who started on the front row, moved backwards on the start, and now it is Little Al that chases Michael Andretti, the pole sitter.
Incredible, the domination by the Unsers and the Andrettis at this track.
The rest of the field strings through. You may notice there are 4 turns missing there as they come up to battle for the lead. It's a straight shot down Seaside now, and one car ran straight off on Seaside. One car straight off the end of the circuit. Yellow flags fly in that corner. And it's Mario Andretti. Mario Andretti into the tire barrier. It looks as if he is all right, though. The rest of the field now answering yellow flags all around the circuit.
Boy, you can see what a job those tires do, Paul. It's just like going into a balloon. Let's take another look at it here.
Here it is as they came into the corner, and Mario brushes the inside wall.
Brushed the inside wall, shot him out straight. He couldn't turn back then.
And Eddie Cheever's onboard camera view, looking backwards as Mario touched him coming to the inside.
Boy, that was close. It's wonder it wasn't worse than that. But, Paul, those tire barriers are just like running into a balloon. That really saved Mario a lot of problems.
He has damaged Cheever's car, so that's going to be at least 2 men out of the race. Mario had qualified 7th. You see his crew there.
A most remarkable set of circumstances here on the first lap at the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
And Paul, in the Mario Andretti pit, the crew watching one of the large screen Diamond Vision screens positioned around the circuit to see the replay, concerned about their driver. At this time, they know no more than what they've just gotten a glimpse of on one of the large screens, but it appears that Mario's day is going to be complete.
They do have the car on the wrecker, but the report was, and you saw it visually, Mario was moving around fine in the cockpit, finally climbed out and walked away. His car owner, Carl Haas, of course, very concerned about the situation on that very first lap and the condition of his driver, a world champion, an Indy 500 winner, and an IndyCar champion, Mario Andretti.
Mario had won 3 out of the first 4 races held here at Long Beach.
Let's go to the pits and Jack Arute.
Paul, Eddie Cheever was able to bring his Target Racing team entry from the Chip Ganassi stable back to the pits, but you're out for the day.
Yeah, I got hit so hard behind. I'm just glad Mario didn't hurt himself. I mean, he went by me 50 miles an hour too quick, and he hit the back of my car, and he lifted up in the air, and he was going straight for the wall. He's very lucky he went down the pit road and not into the wall, because, I mean, I don't know what happened. Everybody makes mistakes, but it's very unfortunate for him and for me. I mean, this is an important race.
Very important, considering the fact, Paul, that he finished second last week on the oval.
Exactly. Eddie Cheever was without question on a roll. And, of course, he was carrying the new Ford engine, which is part of that engine battle between Ford and Chevrolet that has started at the beginning of this IndyCar season and is continuing on. So now behind the PPG pace car with Michael Andretti, the pole sitter, out in front. The field lines up because they need to clear this field. Now, what about the condition of Mario Andretti? Gary Gerould has him.
And Mario is already making that walk back. And, Mario, can you tell us what happened on this terrible start for this day for you?
Well, I just have to look at the tapes, but I was setting up Eddie Cheever on the inside, and he was sort of holding the middle line, and I was trying to just edge up on him to see if I could get the corner, and all of a sudden, and I was right up to his right rear wheel, and he just weaved right over and knocked my left front wheel off, and at that point, obviously I lost the brake line and everything. I just went straight in.
And you are okay now? No injuries?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, Mario. He makes that continued walk back toward the pit in his crew, Paul.
And, of course, now you've seen the onboard camera view from a camera mounted under the roll bar hoop on Eddie Cheever's car.
That is 2 out of 3 of the Ford engines now out of this race.
So, I think the good news is that Mario Andretti is okay. We are under yellow. We're still under a full chorus yellow here at the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. Since the game ran a little long, we had to jump into it. Let's go back now and take a look at how they qualified in 2 days of qualifying here. On the pole, it's Michael Andretti, his 22nd career pole for the 1986 Long Beach winner. And Danny Sullivan is outside. He's twice finished third in this event. In the second row, it's Scott Pruitt, who began his IndyCar career here in 1988. And Al Unser Jr. is outside, going for his 5th straight win here at Long Beach. In the third row, Emerson Fittipaldi, twice a runner-up here. And Eddie Cheever, who ran an impressive second last week at Phoenix. The fourth row on the inside is Mario Andretti, a 3-time winner of this event. And Bobby Rahal is outside, who led wire-to-wire last week in the Phoenix 200. In the fifth row, it's Rick Mears, looking for his first win on these streets. And John Andretti, who is currently 6th in the point standings. In the sixth row, the inside is Scott Brayton. He has 2 top 10 efforts in the last 2 years on this track. And Gregor Wojtek making his second start for A.J. Foyt's team. The seventh row is Jimmy Vasser, driving a car in which Bobby Rahal finished second here last year. And Roberto Guerrero, driving for drag racer Kenny Bernstein. In the eighth row, it's Tony Bettenhausen, a 14-year veteran of the IndyCars. And Ted Trappis, a sophomore driver who finished a strong 6th here a year ago. The ninth row is Scott Goodyear, who ran 7th in this race last year. And Brian Till, making his IndyCar debut. In the 10th row, it's Eric Bachelard, a graduate from the Indy Lights ranks. And Fabrizio Barbaza in his first start here since 1987. In the 11th row, Hiro Matsushita, a 3rd-year driver from Japan, and Joey Marcello making his 3rd career IndyCar start. In the final row, it's Buddy Lazier, a former ski racer from Colorado, and Carol Palmroth of Finland. That was the way they lined up, leading to the green flag. Now, here was a situation in this morning's session as we look at a live shot of Scott Pruitt. He had his problems during the warm-up. As he came onto shoreline, which is the pit straight here, everything appeared to be normal. But watch, though, as he headed down into the very first corner, which is a hard right-hander, passing under the Texaco Bridge just ahead, downshifting, and suddenly... and the car head-on into the tire barrier at the end. Now, looking at it again, apparently what happened was the front brakes failed on the car, because if you watch that front tire, it never stopped rolling. Scott brushed it into the wall, got it pointed back straight, and wisely took the tire barrier right straight on, which is the safest way to take it.
And, of course, the important thing is to understand that Scott Pruitt sustained terrible injuries to his legs 2 years ago in an accident where the brakes failed. So it was a real nightmare for him what happened here.
But as you can see, he's 3rd in the lineup now. That's the backup car, and we are ready to go racing once again. They have the situation over on the seaside straight cleared up. Mario Andretti's car out of the way, and we're back running again as Michael Andretti leads Al Unser Jr. down into the corner. Little Al pokes his nose inside. Danny Sullivan, in the meantime, climbs all over the back end of Scott Pruitt's car. It's a battle for first, second, third, and fourth. Bobby Rahal comes up to make a move as well.
Last year, Little Al was able to surprise Michael and sneak by him into the lead. He was never headed after that. Now, obviously, Michael has seen him this time. There's going to be no surprise move that's going to work.
Yeah, you can watch Michael pull over and try to block Little Al going into that turn at the end of the long straightaway, but the main thing is you look how aggressive Little Al is this early on. And remember, everybody's full of fuel. 40 gallons of fuel standing right behind the drivers.
Here's where the trouble was before, but everybody at the front gets through smoothly as they come to the conclusion now of lap number 9. 9 laps, the scheduled distance 105 laps here at Long Beach. That's 10 laps up from in past years. Danny Sullivan begins to challenge Scott Pruitt again. No challenge at the front of the field, though Al Unser Jr. is in pursuit of Michael as they go under braking. And Al Unser Jr. comes to the inside as Michael locks him up for just a second.
That just shows you how hard Michael is trying, Paul.
And look at Sullivan and Pruitt as Sullivan ducks under Pruitt.
Well, they almost got together there, but it shows you how hard and how important passing is early in the race, because the guys are really trying hard.
It is very important to get your position just as early on as you can.
It makes you wonder, too, if Pruitt was a little conservative coming into that turn because of his brake failure earlier.
I don't think that I'd stomp down on him too hard, and I'd sure test him plenty early.
Interestingly, he brakes with his left foot.
So Scott Pruitt now in the position of chasing Danny Sullivan as the rest of the field comes through. There's Emerson Fittipaldi with Bobby Rahal, last week's winner at Phoenix, right behind him. And it's single file as they come through the tightest turn on the course. That's the hairpin, and back on the pit straight, which is Shoreline Drive.
That's probably no more than a 30 miles an hour turn right at the bottom of it, Paul. It's really a hairpin.
Got a glimpse there in the pits, the 30 car from Fabrizio Barbaza. They've had some trouble with that machine.
The black and yellow car that you're about to see go by the screen right there is Bobby Rahal. He had a bad time in qualifying with some problems with the car, but his crew chief, Jim McGee, told me that on the lap that his engine blew, he'd run a lap fast enough to be on the front row of the grid. I expect to see him move up. There he is right there, Bobby Rahal, who won last week in Phoenix.
Of course, at the beginning of any new season, there's plenty of experimentation going on. That's certainly true in the leader, Michael Andretti's car, brand new Ford engine there. In the second place car, that's a new chassis, the Galmer for Al Unser Jr. Danny Sullivan is a Galmer as well, and that's a brand new chassis for Scott Pruitt as well. So Bobby Rahal is really, well, I should mention Emerson Fittipaldi, who sits right behind Pruitt, and he is a brand new Chevrolet engine too. Bobby Rahal is the only one that is really running a tried and true combination, Bobby Unser.
Well, that's something that's worked good last week at Phoenix. We thought, for example, that the new Fords were going to be stronger than any of them, but it all equaled out, and Rahal, in good handling, outdid everything else.
In the entire history of this race, prior to the start today, 784 laps have been run by the Indy cars. 700 of those have been led by either an Andretti or an Unser. Only 84 laps have been led by anybody else.
And an Andretti and an Unser is in first and second place right now. They are selling T-shirts here, which talk about the picture Michael and Al in boxing gloves, ready to duke it out for 105 laps. And I think that those T-shirts are a real vision of what's going on here.
You can watch as they came off that hairpin corner. You wonder why Michael gets that much of a jump like a little Al, and if they were so close coming out of the turn. And that's because whichever turbocharger lights the first, they jump out about 10, 15 yards on the other car.
You get a great view from high above the circuit here through the first and second turn, now making the right-hand turn for turn number 3 as they continue to work on one another. Now here's that new section. Normally right here they would make a right. Instead they continue straight on underneath the promenade, underneath the garage area, and right down all the way down Seaside before they make this right-hand turn.
That's in turn 6, Paul, and that straightaway is so fast because it's wide open from clear back in turn 4. That's a lot of speed, maybe even faster than the front straightaway, which we're coming on to right now.
The changes in the course are because they're going to expand the convention center.
So there's the way they line up with now 12 laps complete in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. A tremendous run already, and as suggested, it's Unser and Andretti battling once again. It's a giant crowd, over 84,000 people right here watching the race. Michael Andretti continues to lead in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, but for John Andretti, there is a serious problem. Gary Gerould is right there in his pits.
Yes, indeed, Paul. We're at the back of the car. They're working with the gearbox. They've had to remove the rear wing. We understand that he's lost 5th and 6th gears, so they're trying to get access to the gearbox to see if they can free up the linkage and get him back in, but it's going to be a long, tough fight. It's hot back underneath there, and if they get him out, he's already lost a great deal of time.
This has been a long, tough week, in fact, for that team, the Hall VDS team. The VDS standing for Van der Straten, and Rudy Van der Straten passed away on Wednesday of this week past, and so that's certainly having an effect on the team's performance this week.
There's a gentleman that's been involved in racing, Van der Straten, for many years. Be sad to see him gone.
All right, let's go pit side, and Al Unser Jr.'s pit, and Rick Gallis was with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Al Unser Jr. really has the Gallmer chassis running well today, but we understand you made some changes in this early morning practice session. More gear to get more RPM.
Well, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I understand you made some changes to take advantage of the practice session. More gear to get a higher RPM today.
Well, we actually came down on our gearing because we were running quite high RPM yesterday, but this is a long race, and we just want to be at the end when it's all over with.
This is the guy that literally has owned this racetrack for the last couple of years, Paul. Al Unser Jr. and Rick Gallis, they've won here so many times.
At the front of the field, the battles for the most part have broken off. You can see from Little Al's onboard camera, Michael ahead on the circuit, though. For the moment, he's disappeared. Now Little Al closes in the hairpin turn and on to Shoreline. Sam, two distinctly different drivers there, Little Al and Michael, as we take a look at a fight now. Two great numbers. Rick Mears, of course, in number 4, and that's not AJ, that's Gregor Wojtek. He raced in the first race of the year at Surfers Paradise, and he's riding this car today for AJ Foyt's team.
Been doing a pretty good job, too. Of course, has got 2 good feet and everything that Foyt doesn't have.
Here's a fight for 4th place, as now Fittipaldi lines up behind Scott Pruitt. Bobby Rahal is right there as well.
And let's keep in mind, this is another car for Scott, one that he doesn't have much running in because he crashed his other one that you saw on TV a while ago. So he may not be quite used to it, but Emma, one tough guy on a road circuit.
I went over past the True Sports area this morning while they were working on this car, and Steve Horn and everybody were just going as fast as they could to make sure this backup car would be ready for the race itself. Of course, Emerson Fittipaldi has had a fairly smooth weekend and had no apprehensions about the performance of his car as they took the green flag.
That's the new Chevrolet engine in Emerson's car, the new short one, the small one. And, of course, Scott Pruitt has a Chevrolet this year as opposed to the...
All right, let's go pit side with Gary Gerould.
And John Andretti now out of the car. Why are these street circuits so tough on gearboxes, John?
Well,
you all right? You just had a sign come falling down on top of your head. Are you okay?
this has been one of those kinds of days, I'll tell you. Fortunately for us, we got the Pennzoil car running pretty good, and unfortunately for us, we haven't had a gearbox problem since testing, and the guys have done a great job, but just when you least want it, it happens, and I took out our primary gearbox at Phoenix when I got in the wall, and this one still needs a little bit of massaging.
Well, we hope it turns out to be a better day. It's the kind of day when even the sign has fallen on his head, but he's still smiling.
I tell you what, you get him out of the race, you hit him with a sign. He's a pro, though. He can still remember to plug the sponsor during the interview. Out in front of the field, it's still Michael Andretti, chased by Al Unser Jr., Danny Sullivan, Scott Pruitt, then Emerson Fittipaldi is 5th, Bobby Rahal is 6th, and Scott Goodyear is running up in 7th place. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Back at the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, watching Scott Goodyear, who now runs in 7th, but he started 17th. So he's carved his way up through the field. Now is in contest with no one, but steadily trying to close in on the car in front of him. And that car would be Bobby Rahal. So he's trying to close down on Rahal as fast as he can.
Right there, Scott Goodyear. That's because he's going to run good this year, Paul. And that's because some good people have got together. Derek Walker, who's without doubt one of the best team managers in the business, and Jim O'Donnell with McKinsey Financial, one good racer. Oh, there's Derek Walker right there. Now, all these good people got together. Scott Goodyear's a good driver. They're going to be tough for this year's out.
And Scott Goodyear is one of these young drivers who instinctively understands all the computerization of these new cars. And I think that's going to give him a great future because it's headed that way.
They also have another new sponsor on the car in British Petroleum, which is the first time in this series, and they're very happy with that as Scott now works his way around the Filipino driver and continues to work his way up through traffic.
That's Jovi Marcello he just passed. He's lapping him, actually.
And so Scott Goodyear with a great ride. In front of the field, it's still this car, the number 1, Michael Andretti. Al Unser Jr., as you can see now, is well back.
And you can see how close Michael came to the outside wall. The guys do that because that's truly a hairpin turn. So sharp. And once they get out a bit too wide, they're a full steering lock. They can't turn the steering wheel anymore because the cars aren't made to turn any sharper than what you saw.
Bobby, this is vintage racing, really, to have the two best young drivers of this era running first and second. And I think as the day goes on, if they both stay in the race, we're going to have a good demonstration of their respective style. Michael Andretti, who you see here, very aggressive. He throws the car around. You can tell that he's going fast. Al Unser Jr., of course, your nephew, he's very subtle in the car, and at times you can hardly tell standing at the edge of the road he's as fast as he is. He's so smooth.
You might be able to tell as you get that nice view of Michael Andretti that is the new car, a lot lower in the back. This week he's driving the new car, the new power plant. Earlier this week we had the opportunity to ask Michael if a change like this makes him worry.
You're always worried about the little things that can happen because those are the things that actually have been getting us. Last couple races have been very frustrating. It's so funny that we test thousands of miles over the winter and basically don't have much problems. And come to a race weekend, and all we've had is all kinds of little problems that just annoying little things, nothing major, but things big enough that can hurt your chances at winning the race. So it's been frustrating, but I guess. When you take up on a new program like we did with the new engine and the new car, I guess we should expect these things, and hopefully come race day here in Long Beach we'll have it all worked out.
Michael Andretti started on the pole here. You saw one car pull off to his right. That's what they call the back door into the pit area. We don't have an identification on that car yet, but they are allowed to pull off in that section, though sometimes to a driver chasing someone when they make that little dart, it can be very disconcerting.
That was Buddy Lazier from Denver, Colorado, the ski champion. Young lad that's going to make a good driver.
Keeping an eye now on a nice little battle. That in the green car is Roberto Guerrero, and then Tony Bettenhausen, and then Brian Till in the 24 car making his debut and also making a move on Tony Bettenhausen. And if he comes around him, he can pick up a position which would be moving him up to 14.
Brian Till running here in car number 24 comes from a family of lawyers. No racing background whatsoever. What a contrast with Tony Bettenhausen, who he's following, with the great racing Bettenhausen family. But Till, I think, is a very sophisticated guy, wears a monogrammed shirt. His dad died just as Brian was getting involved with the sport, and I think he really, there he comes, making an effort there to outbreak Bettenhausen. No, and I think Brian Till is a man with a very, very serious outlook on this sport.
That green car that we see right out in front is Roberto Guerrero. That car just ran 230 mile an hour around Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
In a lot of ways, this race here for Roberto Guerrero and his team is a shakedown race. As Brian Till continues to worry the daylights out of Bettenhausen, now what looks like a serious move to the inside, he locks the brakes, and Bettenhausen slams the door on him. Till almost lost it there.
That's the end of that long back straightaway, and we were all guessing, and we still think that's where a lot of passing is going to happen today. Obviously, that's what Brian Till was trying. He's got a little bit too much front brake on the car, though, Paul.
What they have done here is, in fact, by the elimination of some of the turns link 2 very long straightaways, and the teams say that's very tough on the gearboxes, but it's also incredibly hard on the brakes. Here's that attempted pass by Brian Till earlier.
Now he's going to go for it. Looks like he's got it made, but now his brakes gave way on the front. They locked up. Once that locks up, you have no steering. So he's got to just back out of it and try not to get in a little wreck right there.
And Tony Bettenhausen, of course, sensed that and decided, I can just stay right here on the line, and I will continue in my position. As the battle continues here back in the field, a fight for 14th place between Brian Till and Tony Bettenhausen. At the front of the field, it is still Michael Andretti. And somewhat back, 5 seconds behind, is Al Unser Jr. There's the great man, the grand champion, A.J. Foyt. He signed a lot of autographs this weekend as he works on recovering from his shoulder injuries and plans to drive in the 76th running of the Indianapolis 500. It's been great to see A.J. around the track this weekend. Back at the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach, this is the battle for fourth, with Scott Pruitt currently occupying the position, but Emerson Fittipaldi just behind him, and Bobby Rahal there as well. Remember, Scott involved in a morning practice session accident. He is driving now the backup car, and he's been locked in a great fight with Fittipaldi.
4 years ago, Scott, who was still relatively unknown at the time, you see him there, gambled his life savings, which was $70,000, to rent a car for this race, and his success led him to the ride that he has today. So this is the 4th anniversary of Scott Pruitt getting into the big time, and he's making the most of it.
Boy, I love that onboard camera view of Scott Pruitt. As a quick spin out, that Gilby Marcello is backwards in the first turn, and it looks like he's all alone, though he was running with traffic as he came into the corner. And there comes that battle with Scott Pruitt, Fittipaldi, and Rahal past him.
I don't think he's got anything bent. He might have done a little bit of touching with other cars, but it looks like he didn't hit the wall. He's wanting somebody to push him, get going, because he obviously has killed his engine, Paul.
Gilby, a very competent little race driver in the open wheel formulas. I say little because I'm short, and he's a little bit shorter than I am.
He's the defending Formula Atlantic champion. There's Gregor Foytek in the pits in A.J. Foyt's car, and as you can see, it can't be good news because they removed the engine cover.
With the back piling off, he is falling steadily through the field. And a nice run, was running 10th when he rolled into the pits. In fact, most of the race rookies were all running right together.
They're pushing him off the track now. That's a kind of like a bad deal. They're going to have to take him out of the race, it looks like.
But you know what? That was a good run for that car. I think a confidence boost for the team.
And the other side of that is AJ's cars are getting some in-race testing every race. And that's going to help development on the chassis as they come to the Indianapolis 500.
Pruitt is doing a terrific job holding off Emerson Fittipaldi here. This is a really gutsy drive, and in fact, Pruitt's been gutsy all weekend. He almost had the pole position, but his engine blew just toward the end of qualifying yesterday. He was unable to defend himself.
You know, the racing bug can bite a lot of people. One of ABC's top-rated sitcoms, Coach, stars an aspiring race driver, Craig T. Nelson. He participated this weekend in the Toyota Pro Celebrity Race and found the competition was fierce.
Yeah. Hey, Howie Burley, how we doing? Come on, I just got a new truck. I was having a little fun.
And having fun he is, as the coach, Craig T. Nelson, learned to race from the best at the Jim Russell Driving School. Last year, Nelson was competing as a celebrity. This year, he entered the race as a professional. But in the race, the coach enrolled in the School of Hard Knocks, finding out that competition was as tough on the racetrack as it is on the TV sidelines. It was obvious that he needed some help from a couple of the best. In this case, the best in IndyCar racing, Rick Mears and Emerson Fittipaldi.
Howard, if the administration doesn't like it, you can tell them to try and catch me.
And Paul, right now we are with Craig T. Nelson, and he is in the pits of one of the best with Rick Mears' crew. And are they going to let you do anything down here, Coach?
Yeah, I'm changing tires, and I'm supposed to hand them like this thing.
Oh, that thing.
That.
You don't know what it is, though.
No, they haven't given me a name. Just hand them that. When they say go, hand them that. I'm ready.
And it's a ratchet, Paul. But let's talk seriously. Screaming Eagle.
A ratchet, Jack.
Screaming Eagle Racing Team. You are going to go seriously racing this year.
Yeah, we've started. We're doing Sports 2000s, and we're going maybe a little
A-Sports racer in SCCA, so we'll see what happens. It's a development year, though.
Well, Paul, he won the Pineapple Bowl. Who knows? He may win a race or two.
I tell you what, that almost always happens. Once you put somebody in that Toyota celebrity race, the pro celebrity, pretty soon they're out buying themselves a race car. It costs them a lot of money when they do it. You can see Danny Sullivan is now closing down on the back end of Al Unser Jr. And little Al runs well behind Michael Andretti.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, the London Sun, an English paper with an enormous circulation, you see Danny Sullivan there at the top of the screen, featured Danny as one of the guys that could make Fergie happy. And other choices were John Kennedy Jr., George Hamilton, Bob Carey. You know, I believe Danny might go.
Roberto Guerrero comes into the pits. This is lap 37, so we should see the start of all the scheduled pit stops here shortly, though this one would seem to be a little bit early given the long yellow period that we saw early on. Nevertheless, the stop looks to be fairly routine.
Well, it does. It looks to be totally routine, but here's some more coming in. Here's Rick Mears, and there's going to be a whole bunch of them coming in. They're going to make the early pits off the first pit.
Let's go to Gary Terrell.
And we get our first look at the Andretti team in action. This is Michael's Newman Haas team. He, of course, won his first ever IndyCar race here 6 years ago, 1986, on the streets of Long Beach. He's been dominant in the early going. Everything appears to be smooth as they have him off the Jackson. He's underway already. Nice stop.
The Michael Andretti screams back in the action. Jack Arute.
Well, the action is taking place down here in the Al Unser Jr. pit, and they were fading back, Paul, because they had a problem with the right rear tire. They made a change in tire pressures, and he is off and away, but that accounted for his fading there in the last couple of laps.
Remember last year when Emerson Fittipaldi and Michael got together? These pits are still very, very tight. And that was Danny Sullivan, that with the pit stop was able to get out ahead of Al Unser Jr. So Sullivan moves up to second place as a result of the pit crew.
Just to reiterate, these are teammates, and it'll be interesting to see whether Al Unser Jr., who had been running stronger than Sullivan earlier, will be let by Sullivan. Sullivan is having a
serious problem. Two cars, one Marcello, the other Eric Bachelard, both in a runoff area. There is some debris there, so one would have to assume contact, but we'll wait for an official report.
That looks like a lot of paper laying on the ground, Paul. They probably had some contact because it's too strange for both of them to be there at the same time.
Well, Marcello's car is totally empty.
It don't look, well, I think that's there from before, and I think, I think Bachelor got there just now.
So now emergency vehicles out on the course, the double yellow flags at the start-finish line. They should send the pace car out very shortly, and that will come at a most opportune time for the leaders to have completed their stops. Back at the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach under a full course yellow, and it appears that Scott Brayton may have run it out of fuel, Bobby Unser.
Yes, it does. He's been coasting for a long time, Paul, and he really is taking up more time by doing the slow coasting, and as opposed to just parking on the track. Somebody would come and got him a lot quicker, I think.
So sitting by the wayside now. This was during his pit stop as Scott Goodyear came in. Now watch as he comes out. See that tire alongside the car? Jumped right over it.
That's the mechanic's fault. The guys that change the tires should know better than that. They've got to pull them out of the way a bit.
High above the course here in Long Beach, California, with its new colors, a new name, the Airship Eagle, piloted by John Creighton. He's been providing these tremendous aerial shots that help us so much, especially in the coverage of auto racing. There's the view down below. See the Queen Mary up there at the top of the screen? Report was here in Long Beach that they may be closing that now as a hotel. And in fact, will sell the Queen Mary for scrap. I certainly hope that doesn't happen. There is a move afoot to save it.
The Spruce Goose is in the big round building, the white one there, and I think it's going to be leaving too, Paul.
It's become one of my favorite shots, this right in the eyes of Scott Pruitt. And what you're seeing at the bottom of the screen there, that's actually the steering wheel as he maneuvers around this track. A great shot there.
Yeah, and what you see at the top of the screen is the cowling. He doesn't have a conventional windshield.
So now, again, under a full course yellow, the second of the day, while they clean some cars off the circuit, they maneuver now behind the PPG pace car. And the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach circuit has been modified since last year. Danny Sullivan takes a look at this new course in this week's Tip from the Cockpit.
Last Victor, after you came out of about turn 4, you had a little bit of a left and a right into a braking area. Now this is where we now go straight, but you turn right, hard right there, a little short acceleration, turn left underneath the high garage. That was a very difficult section because it was so rough in there. It was concrete. It was hard to put the power down. It was a very critical section. Right after that, turn light, left, brake, right, out onto the straightaway. And that was very important to come out onto that straightaway very, very well because it was such a short distance to the next area where you were going to get a chance to outbrake somebody. Consequently, they've changed it. Now we come out of that turn 4, I believe it is, and it's just acceleration as hard as you can for a long way, all the way down to the straight to what I guess was the old turn 11 or whatever, turn 9, where we now have a right-hander. I think the big advantage is it's going to make it easier to pass not only slower traffic, but even fast cars, because it gives us one more very good passing area. The disadvantage in that passing area is that everybody is going to come down that straightaway on the left-hand side, and the passing's on the right. And as I experienced yesterday, I passed a slower car on the right-hand side there, and almost tore the bottom of the car off through a bump. Now, they've informed me that they're going to try to smooth that out, but as it stands, it's not that way. That's going to make it difficult. But from a driver's point of view, of course, it gives you less chance to be able to really pull away from somebody. If your car was working very well through that old tight section, you have less of a chance. Now it's going to be a little bit more of a drag race through the two straightaways.
The way Danny Sullivan views this circuit, Michael Andretti is the leader. He's now completed 42 laps and his first pit stop. But the way they have lined the field up seems to be a little bit confusing. Rick Mears, who is actually in the 8th position, is sitting behind the pace car. Jack Arute, can you add anything to this?
Well, Paul, that is exactly what Roger Penske, Richard Buck, and the rest of the crew are having a discussion right now, and they have been, in fact, for the last several minutes with the IndyCar officials. Their position, although it's somewhat difficult to know specifically, they're saying that the pace car is once again, as in the case of Phoenix, picked up possibly the wrong person. Now, one of the things to remember is when the leaders pit, IndyCar rules state that you take what is called the geographic leader, the next car on the racetrack. That's Penske's position, that they were in error in picking up the wrong car.
That'd be, if they did it, it'd be the third race of 3 in which there's been a problem with Rick Mears' placement on the racetrack. Look at this, Scott Goodyear.
Warming up
coming loose. He's picked something up there on the back wing. Bobby, you have any idea what that might be?
Looks like a piece of paper hanging up on there because it's too far forward to be a piece of aluminum or carbon fiber, Paul.
Shouldn't affect anything. Of course, you consider the Rick Mears situation as the pace car comes off. They're going to leave him right there. Problem possibly passing under the yellow in the first race. Pace car placement questionable at Phoenix last week. Here it is again as they come back to the green flag. And Rick Mears will have a full mile and a half to try to make up because those are the leaders right behind him. Michael Andretti followed by Danny Sullivan and Al Unser Jr. This is the Scott stop-and-go penalty because Scott Goodyear ran over his tire during that yellow flag on the exit of the pits.
Boy, that's a bad thing to have happen at a track like the Long Beach with all these turns and a straight course. It's rough for these stop-and-go penalties.
And, of course, what they do is they hold the stop-and-go penalty until they go green again, so it has a proper competitive effect. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
And, Paul, there was more than that stop and go. They adjusted the front wings, but there was damage on the side panel of the rear wing on the right side. They had to rip it away. He's now back on course. Whether that'll affect the downforce of the handling, he's about to find out.
Gary, we saw that flapping in the breeze, so that was part of the side panel.
That was part of the side panel, and they ripped it off. They've got it down here underneath the toolbox now on the near side of the pit wall.
There you see it as they made the stop and go. Indeed, they had to rip a whole section of the side panel off the car.
Well, that was a piece of carbon fiber, and it really isn't going to bother the handling at all.
Danny Sullivan charges alongside of Michael Andretti. It's a fight for the lead. Al Unser Jr. is right there. You could throw a blanket over the front 3 cars.
And just so everybody knows, when these guys come in for their pit stop, they always get minor adjustments made.
Oh, look at Danny. As Danny darts down inside of Michael, had some problem. And now Al Unser Jr. comes around. Michael is suddenly back rolling at speed. What could it be, a missed gear?
He definitely has some problems, and he probably has a little bit of engine getting started problem. In other words,
and the fight continues for the lead as Al Unser Jr. now comes inside of Danny Sullivan. And Al Unser Jr. will be the leader of the race. So just in the space of 1 lap, the lead has changed twice.
Looks like a vulture finding fresh meat as soon as something happened to Michael right there.
Whatever happened to Michael might still be affecting him as he appears to fall back just a little bit. As they come onto the pit straight again, there comes Danny Sullivan through. Al Unser Jr. is back in front. 4 straight wins. Can he do it again this year? Well, he's in the key position.
Michael's either lost a gear in the transmission, which is quite possible, Paul, or he's having fuel injection problems. Most likely he's lost a gear in his transmission.
Well, Emerson Fittipaldi has also moved around Michael. Now Scott Pruitt is right there trying. As they come off the second turn and head for turn 3, Michael slows completely, and the rest of the field cycles past.
He's trying to get out of the way. He's really being a good sport about this because he realizes he's a lame duck, and he doesn't want to mess all the other guys up. He just about had a wreck up in the front just a little bit ago.
Got to be a lot of radio communication with this pit as Carl Haas and his crew are watching what's happening, Gary Gerald.
Indeed they are, and it is gearbox problem. So another Andretti. First it was John with the gearbox. Now it's Michael, and the tough luck that plagued him in the season opener to Australia, then at Phoenix, has caught him again at Long Beach. Paul?
One of the things that you, Bobby Unser, were concerned with, that the gearboxes were being really handled tough now with this new circuit.
And yet, it's easier on it than it used to be because there's less shifting going on.
Here was it as Danny Sullivan came up. Michael just suddenly missed a gear going into the, coming off in the second corner, going into 3. And, of course, Danny Sullivan was right there.
Michael Andretti, of course, is the defending PPG IndyCar champion, and yet he has not finished any of the first 3 races.
Very often when a gearbox breaks and the guys are that slow or that close together, Paul, there's a wreck, there's contact. That time it was just short of a miracle that there wasn't any contact.
This was the situation from Michael's point of view. Through turn 1, here's where the problem happened, and Michael yanked it over, didn't exit normally, trying to find some room, then suddenly it chugged forward, and by then Danny Sullivan was climbing.
Watch how quickly he looks in the rearview mirror, though, because he knows that he's going to slow and that people are right behind him. He tries to stay out of the way, and you see he does as Danny squeezes by.
And he's geared for racing, and then all of a sudden it's get out of the way.
And you have to change your mind in a hurry, don't you?
On board Al Unser Jr.'s car, the same situation. See Danny Sullivan just ahead and then Michael in front of him.
Now, little Al's got the best advantage out of the 3 cars because he watches what happens to Michael, what Ray Hall does, and he makes his plans accordingly. And, of course, he came out leading the thing.
At this point, little Al can see that there's something wrong. He darts to the left, tries to find room there, then comes down to the inside, and he, too, is past Michael Andretti. So a substantial change here as we complete 47 laps, and that change puts Al Unser Jr. in front of the field, followed now by Danny Sullivan, Emerson Fittipaldi, Scott Pruitt in the backup car. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC stations. Andretti as he rolls back into the pit area. Problem in the gearbox taking him out of the race. Don't forget, though, last year after 3 races, Michael Andretti trailed in the PPG standings by 34 points and still came back to his great championship. Let's go down to the pits and Gary.
Well, he stayed in the cockpit as they rolled it all the way back into the paddock area. We've seen 3 cars come out of this race with gearbox problems. Michael, what is it about these street circuits that make it so tough on the gearbox?
Well, you're always in the low gear, putting a lot of torque through, the whole drivetrain, and when you do that, you put a lot of strain and things break. But, the biggest problem was we didn't have enough miles of testing on this. It may have broke testing if we would have had more miles with this new car, but we didn't.
3 consecutive races with bitter disappointment now, but then I remember last year, that's the way that season started, and you won a championship.
Yeah, but at least we had a 4th place going into Indy. We don't have anything going into Indy, so this one hurt big time.
Well, the month of May, we hope will be more promising. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Well, it's a simple solution. He just comes back with an Indy win, and everything will be fine. Tony Bentonhausen reaches down into the cockpit of his car. He was running 16th prior to pulling the car off the edge of the circuit, and it appears that Tony's day is done as well.
Yeah, it's kind of rare to have this many cars falling out, Paul, but transmissions have always been a problem here at Long Beach.
Talk about those tight gears. They run this whole part of the track in 2nd gear, then accelerate on the back straight, where they're starting onto that after one more turn here. He's in 2nd, now he's going into 3rd, then 4th, then 5th, then 6th down the back. And then at the other end, which he's approaching at about 175 miles an hour, he will go down actually into first gear, which is really tough on a transmission.
In the cars out of the race thus far, of course, Mario Andretti and Eddie Cheever on the very first lap with contact. Fabrizio Barbaza had his brakes go. Jody Marcello, John Andretti, Michael Andretti, and Scott Brayton all out with gearbox problems, and Gregor Wojtek had a hole in his headers and so had to retire. And we don't yet have an official reason for Tony Bettenhausen's retirement.
For all that, we've had better racing, closer racing, and more action than we've had for several years here at Long Beach.
Change in the circuit certainly have kept the cars together as we watch Danny Sullivan now with Emerson Fittipaldi just behind him. And this, of course, is a battle for second place. Allenzer Jr. is just ahead with the lead.
You know, we have in the first two places, kind of interesting, Galmer Chassis, the first year with these brand new cars designed and built by the Rick Gallis people. And Paul, that's something kind of new and different to have those cars going fast and leading the races this early in the season.
Saturday on ABC Sports, the pressure is on as we've got a car off, and then Scott Goodyear, quick little spin, kicked the clutch in, kept the engine going, and stays in the fight. Scott Goodyear was running in sixth, and it looked like he may have been able to hold on to that position.
It's the brakes. You know, that's at the end of the long front straightaway, and brakes get awfully hot here at Long Beach. There's Scott. He went in and too much rear brake on the car. He just locked up and spun around.
He did a nice job, don't you think, Bobby?
Yes, he did, Sam, and very similar to maybe what happened to Scott Pruitt. Of course, Scott didn't have any front brakes as we saw.
Here he put the clutch in because these cars don't have starters, and if you stall them, you're done for.
Well, it takes a smart driver not to kill the engine.
About to say that next Saturday on ABC Sports, the pressure is on in bowling's top pros in the Tums Classic. Then on ABC's Wide World of Sports returns to Cancun, Mexico to find out who is the best all-round athlete. It's the final challenge of the Jeep Superstars, plus the last major Derby prep race, the Wood Memorial Invitational presented by Kawasaki. That's all next Saturday right here on ABC Sports.
You know, Paul, just to mention, as you watch little Al coming off the turns, I want everybody to watch for the front wings. These were the controversies over the flipping last week at Phoenix. There was only one set of these wings. Danny Sullivan won the flip. He ended up with them at Phoenix. They both have them now, and of course both of them are running 1 and 2 on the racetrack. You can see the wings real good, and they're totally different designs.
The fight continues, too, between Bobby Rahal and Scott Pruitt. That is a fight for fourth place. Gary Gerald, do you have an update on gearboxes?
4 drivers now out of the race with gearbox problems, Paul. And part of the problem, these new slimline gearboxes, the gears get aligned closer together than ever before. And if you get the slightest bit of pressure where they bend in here, even thousandths of an inch inside the gearbox at the rear of the car because of the stresses of the street circuit, it can nick the teeth. And once those teeth start to get nicked, then it just kind of disintegrates. You can see what happens. These are pieces of teeth from gearboxes that have been literally destroyed. And once you get these chunks floating around down there, you've lost all effectiveness. Everything jams up. You just can't drive the race car. It's already happened to 2 Andrettis, Scott Brayton and Joey Marcello.
Now, one of the things about that, Paul, is that...
And here comes Bobby Rahal as he moves inside Scott Pruitt and picks up fourth place. So Bobby Rahal now beginning to move up through the field, and Scott Pruitt, though that backup car is looking very strong.
You know, I started to mention on the transmissions, if one of those teeth gets caught in between the gears, sometimes it splits the entire case of the transmission apart. That's thousands of dollars, maybe $25,000 worth of damage, Paul.
Rahal, incidentally, cooled his tires for a lap or two when he was behind Scott Pruitt, and you notice that once he made his move ahead of him, he's really put the hammer down. He's going to try to pull away 2 or 3 tenths of a second and convince Scott Pruitt that he can't counterattack.
56 laps are complete, the 105-lap scheduled distance, and now Danny Sullivan closing in at the end of Shoreline on the leader, Allenzer Jr. He darts out to take a look. Fittipaldi closes in from third place. Let's go down. Jack, what about Danny Sullivan?
Well, Paul, the reason Danny Sullivan's beginning to pick the pace up a little bit, do you remember when Scott Pruitt had his problem? They cut short the practice session by 3.5 minutes. The team of both Alan Unser Jr. and also Danny Sullivan didn't get to scuff in the total number of tires they wanted. So on that last pit stop, this team, Danny Sullivan's team, elected to put the non-scuff tires on, knowing that if they could hold on until they got scuffed in, that they would come into play and they could resume a really fast pace, and that's what's happening now.
Well, Jack, that and the fact that when Danny looks in his rearview mirrors, look what he sees. Emerson Fittipaldi, he is under a lot of pressure. This race is really getting tense at the front here.
And one of the reasons for that, Sam, is everybody was a little concerned about fuel, so everybody stayed a little bit out of the throttle. They didn't short shift, but they stayed out of the throttle. Now everyone feels they've got plenty of fuel. They're letting all the stops out.
Danny Sullivan tried to move inside in the first turn, darted out, couldn't get past, and so he continues to chase Al Unser Jr. In third place. It is still Emerson Fittipaldi. Al Unser Jr. trying to hold off Danny Sullivan, now has to contend with traffic ahead. Hiro Matsushita, as they are on the pit straight once again. And they stretch out, but this may be an opportunity for Danny Sullivan as he tries to gauge the traffic.
This is a very big race for Danny Sullivan. Remember, with the Alfa Romeo engine, he was virtually in eclipse all of last year. He joined this new team. the Gallus team, and this is the first time he's really doing something significant for them, and the driver needs to really show form on a new team before he really feels part of it. He's feeling part of it right now. And remember, too, the pressure from Emerson Fittipaldi behind him. When Danny was driving for the Penske team, it was he who was dropped from the team, not Emerson Fittipaldi, so he would very much like to settle his personal score.
And, of course, as they came past, Hiro saw them coming and very quickly moved over, but had the presence of mind to assume just because there's one doesn't mean there's another. Stayed over until Emerson Fittipaldi, running in third place, was able to get past as well. Now, last year, at about this point in the race, the Gallus Craco team was running 1 and 2 with Little Al and Bobby Rahal. As Danny Sullivan tries Little Al, this year it's Gallus Craco, Little Al, and Danny Sullivan.
You know, you can see that attempt on that pass. I really thought it was going to be a pass there, but you can see that coming out of the last hairpin turn. Danny was really edging up on Little Al. He was going to drive it deep. Now, the problem is it's hard to drive it deeper than Little Al.
Bobby, how about the politics here within the team? I mean, you got to be awful careful if you're Danny Sullivan not to put Little Al off the road here.
The look from high above, you got to look at the race summary at the conclusion of 60 laps. Al Unser Jr. looking very strong. We spoke to Al Unser Jr. about the pressure that he must feel here in Long Beach as he attempts to win his 5th consecutive victory here. The pressure at times can be tough.
No, not really. You know, every race is the same. We go out and we put pressure on ourselves to win in every session and win at every race. And so it's all the same amount of pressure no matter where we're at or what we're doing. We need to go out there and we need to do our best and we need to win. And if we don't, then we go home and we figure out where we were lacking and try to improve in those areas.
Bobby, your nephew just said the pressure is the same everywhere. You going to talk to him?
Oh, he knows better than that, but he does have a lot of pressure. After all, this is a new car, just like a new team, because it's new cars, and it's the first one that Gallus has ever built out of his shops. So the pressure is really, really high on it right now. But just think what it's going to be like in Indy coming up next, Paul.
Boy, it's going to make for a great Indy 500 this year, and of course we'll have coverage here on ABC. Just in front of Al Unser Jr., that's Roberto Guerrero. Bobby Unser reminded you earlier, we'll do it again. In testing at the Indianapolis Speedway a couple of weeks ago, he ran a lap, unofficially of course, 230 miles an hour.
The pressure, too, is on the Galmer outfit here, who's building the cars, because they can't afford even to finish the season if they don't get some orders for similar cars. And this is the first time, really, except for that pole position down in Australia, that these Galmer cars have really showed some form. If I was going to buy a car right now, I might look at a Galmer. I wouldn't have at Phoenix a week ago.
Just for another Little Al getting by Roberto Guerrero. Everybody's getting by pretty good there, but the Buick and Roberto Guerrero is the green car right there. Now, that isn't the 45 inches that the Chevrolets have and that the Fords have. That's a 50-inch. They've allowed kart or IndyCar racing has allowed 50 inches now, so the green car, the Buick, does have more horsepower than it did last year by a bunch.
And of course, Emerson Fittipaldi just coming around Roberto Guerrero now. He has one of the two brand new Chevy engines, what they're calling the B model on the circuit. Rick Mears has the other one. And Rick Mears, because the placement of the pace car, continues to run in 7th place, but he is well behind this race.
A little bit. One more thought on the Buick engine. That's a rocker arm engine. It's a basic stock block type of an engine. There's nothing stock in it, but it's built by Buick, and it does have rocker arms, and everything is basically like a stock engine.
And of course, that particular car is owned by dragster Kenny Bernstein, who just rocketed through the 300-mile-an-hour barrier for top end, huh?
That's a bunch. Kenny did a good job on that one.
The interesting thing here is that Emerson Fittipaldi, who seemed to be taking the pressure to Danny Sullivan, who you see there, is now starting to draw back. So despite the fact that the two Gallus Craco cars are dueling with each other, they're pulling away from Emerson.
For a bit there, Fittipaldi was closing, but now these two cars run alone, and Danny Sullivan continues to let his teammate know that he is there, and if Little Al lets up at all, then Danny Sullivan is going to be on top and past Al Unser Jr. to pick up the lead of this race. 66 laps are now complete at Long Beach. Continues at the front of the field in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. First, second, and third all running right together on the course. Al Unser Jr. is being challenged constantly and continually by his teammate Danny Sullivan. At the same time, Emerson Fittipaldi sits back in third, ready to make a move at any moment.
You know, Little Al is not getting through number 1, 2, 3, and 4 turns as fast as Danny, but he seems to get off the hairpin a little bit quicker. Therefore, he gets down the front straightaway a little bit quicker, and Danny can't pass him right there. It's just enough where Danny can't quite get by, Paul.
We're at lap 69. We've anticipated, at least here in the booth, that the first pit stops would come at about lap 72. Jack Arute, will you agree with that?
Paul, actually, they can run the window as far as lap 81, and what's interesting are the type of strategies that are developing down here on pit road. Now, in the case of your leader, Rick Gallus leads this team quite a bit, and that's Al Unser Jr. Now, what they are doing is they are discussing what they are going to do in terms of tire pressures. They still aren't happy with the way the car's handling. They have continuously adjusted the pressures. Conversely, on his other team, that one driven by Danny Sullivan, they have not had any problems at all, with the exception of that one set of tires they had to get to come into the racetrack because they weren't scuffed properly. Third place team, on the other hand, that of Emerson Fittipaldi, they were concerned about fuel. They say after the last stop, they will give Emo the go-ahead to turn it up as fast as he can and try and go from third to first. Let's go to Gary Gerold real quick, too, for a report.
And, Jack, we're with the 4th place team. Bobby Rahal, Carl Hogan, Jim McGee, and the rest of the Brain Trust have been huddling here behind us on the wall. That window is open. We can expect a stop at any time. They can go the distance from there, but they're not going to change a thing. At least that's what they're telling us. They like the way the race car is handling. They'd love to see a full course yellow to tighten it up a little bit more, but they have to attack from the 4th spot to try to protect the season points lead through the first 2 events.
Well, now, if you're leading the race like Little Al is right now, the way to get better fuel mileage, what they always have mileage problems here, Paul, is the short shift. Now, you can't afford to do that when somebody like Danny Sullivan right there is so close behind you. So short shifting can't help the mileage for Little Al.
As they came across the line the last time, the battle, as you can see, is broken off just a little bit. 1.5 seconds separating first and second, and Fittipaldi closer to Sullivan than Sullivan is to the leader, Al Unser Jr. You also got a view there of the 47 car. That's Jim Vassar, who is having a great race here. In fact, Vassar is running 8th, Brian Till, another rookie, 9th, and Eric Bachelor, who you saw a moment ago, is running in 10th. Roberto Guerrero on pit road. The report of a misfire in the engine on that car.
Now, there's a car that's going to have problems in fuel mileage because they run 50 inches of manifold pressure and it's more cubic inches in the engine. So they should have, if anybody does, a little bit more fuel problems.
They take the cowling off. He was running 11th prior to coming in with this problem. Slowed down visibly on the course, and now the crew will go to work trying to determine whether or not they can get that car back into the fight.
The gap that Little Al has over Danny Sullivan right now, which isn't very far, Paul, but the little bit of gap he got came about because of traffic. Little Al got through some traffic really good. Rahal got hung up just a bit.
It at least gives Little Al some breathing room now because he runs 2 seconds ahead of everyone else for the most part being Danny Sullivan. Fittipaldi runs in third. Bobby Rahal continues to sit and wait and stalk from fourth place. Scott Pruitt runs in fifth. Scott Goodyear, with a wonderful run, is up in sixth place.
Good view of the front end of these new Galmer cars. The wing assembly, which you see there on Danny Sullivan's car, designed by Alan Mertens to channel the air up over the tires in a way to reduce the aerodynamic drag of those front tires. When Gary Gerald and I talked to Alan Mertens yesterday at some length, Mertens refused to divulge the real secret of this front end and kept it covered up, but you can see it now because it's in a race.
Well, they really can't cover them up. I don't know why they do that anyway, but by the same token, what it's doing, Sam is trying to put the air where it still goes underneath the tunnels. That's what really holds these cars to the ground, the tunnels underneath the car. That's where the ground effects really come in. And if the wings are a wrong design, the air doesn't go underneath the tunnels good.
From time to time, you can get a good idea of the tunnels, not on this shot, on some a little lower. They are the open spaces underneath the two sides of the car.
And which makes it just like a vacuum cleaner. It actually sucks the car right to the ground.
A little negative pressure under there, and the cleaner you can get the air into it, the better it's going to work. That's Jim Vasser, the Stars and Stripes car in the pits.
Jim Hayhoe owns that car, a guy that used to race with us many years ago. Vasser, of course, it came from Formula Atlantic last year, and he's really quite good, Paul.
Jim, by the way, came up to me and said, you know, this is pretty expensive sport. It's changed a little bit. You bet it is. This is the top of the order. 16 and a half seconds for Jimmy Vasser. That's a good stop for a new crew. And there is the 21 car, Buddy Lazier, as he comes in and out of the pits.
He's been in and out all day here of the race, having a lot of problems. Buddy needs to get a good break and have a couple of good races.
Buddy Lazier in second grade won a reading contest. Does that sound like a big deal? Well, it was because Buddy was dyslexic and still is, and he had memorized the material. You know, three-time world champion Jackie Stewart is also dyslexic, and like Stewart, Buddy has extraordinary drive and determination. He's never let the dyslexia stand in his way. He's a college graduate, savagely good skier, and of course at 24 years old, he's a terrific driver.
Third place, Emerson Fittipaldi in Jackaroo.
And Paul, this is a critical stop for them. They wanted to come in a little early so they could get the better rubber on, but what is going to take the most time is they need every ounce that is in the fuel tank. They're shaking it. He's down and away. 14.8 seconds, a very quick stop.
Now, the thing about Emo is, coming in early, that's a Roger Penske design. Roger thought of that because there's no traffic. Look, he came in with no traffic, he left with no traffic. All the fuel they had could go in the car anyway, so it was good thinking on Roger's part.
Emerson Fittipaldi comes in with 30 laps to go in the end of the race. That's well within the fuel window that they have already responded to. So we'll keep an eye on what it will do in terms of positioning on the race course as Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan continue to battle it out for the lead.
It was a good time to stop, of course, unless there's a full course yellow between now and the time that the two leaders have to make their stop.
But historically, Sam, we don't have full course yellows. And Roger Penske's team are gambling people. They go for wins rather than just finishes.
Boy, I agree with you. I think it was a good move.
I think, in fact, what you're thinking is historically they don't have full course yellows toward the end of the race. We've already had two here today, and that, in fact, is a little bit unusual. So they are taking a gamble. Al Unser Jr. still being chased by Danny Sullivan as Rick Mears comes into the pits.
Rick running back in 7th place, uncharacteristically far back, even on a road racing course, which he has not excelled at over the last few years since the injury to his feet.
Those are the new Penske cars also, and it looks like they're going to be very fast on the tracks like Indianapolis and like Michigan and etc. But on the road circuits here at Long Beach, the Penske team has always had problems, it seems like.
New Nigel Bennett designed car, brand new engine in that car. Al Unser Jr. still in front, Jackaroo.
And Paul, they are going to gamble. They're making a big change. Just moments ago, they rolled away the set of tires that they were going to use, and they rolled up on the fronts. They broke a set, literally. The fronts are scuffed. They're worn tires. On the back, they're going to put two literally brand new tires on the car. So that's changed their set thinking.
As you see Scott Pruitt come in for his stop, still having a pretty good day. Scott Pruitt running in 5th. You saw the sign said, let's know how your brakes are. That's a question, brakes, and reset your fuel meter.
Yeah, which means reaching up to the dash and pushing a button, and it resets the menu in the computer.
And
I think he just did it.
Yeah, that's very important because that's what gets the computer going. So tell the driver so he can tell the guys either by radio what his fuel is doing, what his fuel consumption. But remember, we've only got about 24, 25 laps in the race. So fuel is going to be easy for most of them right now.
That stop ran rather long at 23 seconds for Scott Pruitt. Bumped him to 6th place. Scott Goodyear got around. And Al Unser Jr., there's the crew laid out for Bobby Rahall's car. He's running in 3rd now.
And he's only 3 seconds back going into this stop. He's really been coming up.
All the crews are ready for the leaders now. Little Al is just 0.3 of a second ahead of his teammate Danny Sullivan. And Bobby Rahal is 3 seconds back from that.
Now this is going to really be something when they come into pits. We're really going to have to follow that close because same team, same general bunch of guys that work together and practice their pit stops together. So it's going to be interesting to see how it comes out.
This is where the pressure is really on the crewmen waiting for their car to arrive at the pits. Incredible.
And Al Unser Jr. makes his turn into the pit area, and he comes down for his stop. So Al Unser Jr. is in, Jack.
And Paul, it's like precision craftsmen as they go to work. Let's listen. They've changed the rear tires, as we said. Brand new rear tires, old back tires. They clean the radiator area, and they're away in 12.4. Let's go to Gary Jarrow.
And Bobby Rahal, we had him at 11.7 as he hustles right out behind. He was further up toward pit in, so he's got to try to make up that distance. But Carl Hogan leading the cheers. This was a terrific stop.
Danny Sullivan stayed out on the course, picked up the lead. Al Unser Jr., Bobby Rahal, Emerson Fittipaldi have all made their stops.
The rules of most teams are the guy that's leading between the two cars, he pits first. The guy that's running second in the team race pits next. Bobby Rahal goes next. Little Al incidentally got held up a little bit by Scott Goodyear coming in because it's so important when this man right here was that close behind him.
First place, Danny Sullivan in, Jack.
And Paul, they have not had any problems whatsoever other than that one little tire snafu. They are taking on fuel. They've finished the exchange. The fuel, they still have plenty in the tank.
And here comes Al Unser Jr. off of the last corner as Danny Sullivan kicks the throttle and roars out of the pits. Can Danny maintain the lead with Little Al on the charge? Little Al screaming down toward the first turn now. They'll join right down there at the end of the straightaway. Here is Sullivan maneuvering into the corner. Here is Al Unser Jr. coming right in behind him. So the battle is on. The pit crews did their job. The final stops are complete, and Danny Sullivan is still in front.
Now that shows you one little holdup by Scott Goodyear. He just happened to be, not his fault, he happened to be coming in when Little Al did. That has put Little Al back this far for sure.
They say races are won in the pits, and there is a perfect example of it right here.
And Al Unser Jr. is right there and closing in. He looked to the inside. He is going to do everything he can to worry Danny Sullivan now as they come toward the hairpin now. Danny Sullivan is out in front, but Little Al is still doing everything he can. The decision may come at the end of this long straightaway as they come onto the pit straight. Al Unser Jr. is set up trying to catch Danny Sullivan, but Danny Sullivan pulls a little bit away. Still Al Unser Jr. now as they come to peak RPMs, approaching 13,000 RPMs, closes in, and Little Al comes to the inside, and Al Unser Jr. picks the lead up again from Danny Sullivan.
As I've said many times, Paul, there isn't anybody that can drive into a turn from high speed as deep as Little Al can. He knew that. I could watch him when he came off the hairpin, how hard he was crouching on behind back of Danny, and I knew he was going to try a pass right there.
And I don't think Danny was 100% confident on those new tires. To you, Bobby, he seemed tentative during that lap that he was leading.
At the race driver school, they'll tell you you do all your braking before you do all your turning. I guarantee you that didn't happen here. And Little Al was modulating those brakes as he turned in, made a little move to the outside, and then swept right down inside of Danny Sullivan. So now it is Little Al, Al Unser Jr., that has the lead of the race, having just taken it away from Danny Sullivan. We'll be back with more after this message and a word from our ABC stations. pit crews have done their jobs. The final stops are complete. 84 laps of the 105-lap scheduled distance is complete. Thus far, it is Al Unser Jr. now inching away from his teammate Danny Sullivan. You can see Bobby Rahal with the stops picked up third place. Emerson Fittipaldi dropping to fourth, and Scott Pruitt in fifth. Right from the time when Ren Rooney of Toyota gave the call to start engines, we've had a great day in the Indy cars, but it's also been a great weekend with the Pro Celebrity Race. One of the great weekend events here is, in fact, the Toyota Pro Celebrity. 2 years ago, our colleague Jack Root participated in the race and was on hand to report this year's run.
This year's Toyota Pro Celebrity Race saw plenty of action. The annual affair pits 16 drivers in identical Toyota Celicas. But fans knew early on that instead of IROC, they were witnessing IREC. First turn, first lap. Ian Ziering of Beverly Hills 90210, Mike Bielmer, and Joe Amato connect with the tire wall. Coach star Craig T. Nelson showed early muscle until Tim Allen of Home Improvement used more power to park him. Nelson tried to continue, but the damage was terminal, ending the day for the leader of the Screaming Eagles. Even the pros weren't spared in this crash fest. Former Indy 500 winner Parnelli Jones collided with Bielmer, and then Allen, in desperate need of Binford Super Brakes, gets into it. Tim, minus his trusty assistant Al, culminated his day with this incredible pirouette. At the checkered flag, P.J. Jones, son of Parnelli and an IMSA regular, took the victory. Second place went to off-road racer Rod Millen. And NHRA Top Fuel drag racer Joe Amato won the celebrity portion. By the way, Allen finished 13th.
And like any great race, eventually becomes Chris Pook. The promoter here has turned this from a single race into a wonderful weekend happening on the streets of Long Beach in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. The battle now is the Indy cars, and it indeed is a fight. Al Unser Jr. has picked up the lead of the race in his Valvoline car number 3. His teammate Danny Sullivan sits about a second and a half back. You get a glimpse of him from time to time. Bobby Rahal runs in third place. Fittipaldi fourth, Scott Pruitt fifth, and Scott Goodyear in sixth.
The crowd is reacting tremendously to this race. Every time the leaders go by, they come to their feet. In all the years of racing at Long Beach, which started back in 1975, I think this may be the best race we've seen.
The race summary after 85 laps. He's led 38 of the 85. Average speed is at 189.9 miles an hour. And, of course, we've had 2 different full course cautions, 11 cars out. Most of those are gearbox problems.
Yes, they have, Paul, but looks like the cars that are left back in now, no gearbox problems. I've just been timing little Al, and he's just slowly pulling away from Danny Sullivan, and mostly by traffic, whatever they catch.
Let's remember how Al Unser Jr. got into this position. He has, of course, that onboard camera. He was chasing his teammate Danny Sullivan just a few laps ago, and here was little Al's point of view as they came onto the pit straight. Of course, the next turn, always a critical turn because it's a sharp turn at the end of a long straightaway.
We talk about his smoothness as a driver, and Bobby made the great point about how late he can brake. Watch how deftly he does this. You see, he doesn't lock a wheel. He doesn't jerk the car from side to side. It's a perfect move.
So Al Unser Jr. is out in front. His teammate runs in second place. Both of these cars, brand new Galmers, and Jack Arute, they were designed by Alan Merton.
Absolutely, Paul, and I'm with him right now. And Alan, you've got to be absolutely ecstatic to see your Galmer chassis running so well here at Long Beach.
Well, naturally, of course I am. I mean, we're all pretty excited. But as usual, it's all down to fuel at the end. We're cutting it pretty fine. We're just keeping our fingers crossed.
Now, can an engineer do something to assist that fuel situation? Can you inherently design some things?
Well, I mean, obviously at the basic stage of the design of the car, all you can do is get the drag out of it. But right now, obviously, it's down to the driver.
And it's also nail-biting time because he's got one in first and second.
So Al Unser Jr. now can he hold on? 89 laps are complete. The 105 lap scheduled distance. Danny Sullivan continues to chase him.
And keep in mind, Paul, what the team managers will call the drivers, tell them what they think the fuel is doing. Little Al can tell them by radio what his meter says on the dash, and they'll figure it out and tell him to short shift. For example, just to stay ahead of Danny Sullivan wouldn't be the contest if he knew he was going to run out, because second's better than parking on the track.
Only man on to win 5 straight races at the same track. A.J. Foyt at Trenton, New Jersey. But is Al Unser Jr. on his way to matching that feat? He leads the race here in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. Thursday of this week, little Al was honored at the Lakers game. Boy, look at the size distance. But I'll tell you what, little Al is very, very quick. Is number 5 appropriate? Will it be his 5th win here? We'll be back. Al Unser Jr. with Danny Sullivan still there, keeping track of the leader of the race. Bobby Rahal still sets in 3rd. The leaders running right together on this sack. This is a beautiful setting that the race is located here alongside the Pacific Ocean, and an environmental artist adds to this beauty with his latest endeavor.
This is the convention center here in the heart of Long Beach. As you can see, it is being transformed by a giant mural that, when it's finished, will be the largest anywhere in the world. Its creator is a man known simply as Weiland. He describes himself as an environmental artist, an artist with a mission, in a sense, to call attention to the world's largest mammals. This is his 33rd large mural, and through the years he has developed a technique which, as he describes it anyhow, sounds much simpler than it really is.
Well, I really don't do any preliminary drawings or grids or anything like that. I create everything up here on the wall. I do spend a lot of time with the whales. I dive all over the world with these whales, and I take photographs of them. But I think I do have a grid, but it's in my mind. It's in the mind's eye. And the only way that I can really explain it is when I'm up here painting a whale and I'm standing this close to the wall, I try to envision the whale swimming right alongside me.
Now, Paul, on Friday, little Al had himself hoisted up on the scaffolding and did a load of work on that mural. And Weiland has named one of the babies. Whoa, look at that. That's Pruitt. Oh, no, after such a great ride.
Tangled up in some of the flags and banners at the edge of the course. He had a great ride going. Now follows down through the order. He was running in 5th place. And when Scott Goodyear comes past this side on the track, then Scott Goodyear will move into 5th.
This was something that Pruitt's team really needed, a success here. He appears just to have lost it cleanly.
Looks like the corner coming off of Seaside was slick for everybody that came through it. This is the onboard camera view, Bobby.
Did you notice that the cars are getting in the air, too? There you coming in. He just got loose. There was no reason. Nobody was close to him. It's slippery down there. Probably somebody's losing a little bit of oil, a little bit of water, Paul.
Isn't it fantastic that when you have an incident, the next thing is we can see it as the driver sees it? Isn't that fabulous?
Unbelievable. Yeah. He could not keep the engine going, got tangled up, and now the IndyCar safety team is going to give him a pull, and hopefully will get him back into the running. And there come the leaders past. Al Unser Jr., Danny Sullivan just behind him. Bobby Rahal sits in 3rd place. Fittipaldi runs in 4th. 95 laps are complete.
Just to wrap that idea up, one of the whales is now going to be named Little Al. I'm not sure they shouldn't name the biggest one of all after it.
So the fight continues. 96 laps are now complete. We're in the closing moments. Will Al Unser Jr. make it 5 in a row? And Brian Till, he'd been missing, had an engine miss for a couple of laps, and then suddenly the engine let go. He was running in 12th place, and with the attrition in this race, despite this situation, Brian may in fact be able to hold on to 12th position.
That's the Judd engine that Scott Pruitt rode with last year.
These aerial pictures that have been coming to you throughout the day help show you the coverage. They've all been courtesy of this magnificent airship. It is a newly painted and newly renamed airship Eagle from nearby Carson, California. There are the shots down, and of course they're looking on the lead. Al Unser Jr. being chased by his teammate Danny Sullivan, and Bobby Rahal every lap inches just a little bit closer. Emerson Fittipaldi is in 4th, and now Scott Goodyear is up in 5th place. And perhaps this will be Scott Goodyear's best finish ever, despite one spin and one stop-and-go penalty. 5th would be the best he's ever done in the IndyCars.
Just in case anybody knows it, Paul, there was a safety truck out on the track, and they're going after Brian Till. Sometimes the fans watching TV might just wonder what that extra was on the track. Going too slow, of course.
Well, they were able to pull Brian Till back into a separated area between the wall and out of harm's way. I assume now that they will leave that car there until the end of the race, because it is only 6 laps away. 99 laps are now complete. And Al Unser Jr. flashes over the start-finish line, completing the 100th lap. And in the Gallus Craco pits, they can't believe it. Shelley is worrying herself to death, wondering, can Danny Sullivan and his crew close in, and can Bobby Rahal close in? There's Debbie Rahal, keeping track of her husband. None of the cars are in contest at this moment. They're lined up, nice and single file. Emerson Fittipaldi, though, closing in on the Seaside Straight now.
It's amazing. If a race is this long, and at the end of the race, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4 cars, all on the same lap, and they're definitely going to be racing each other a whole bunch harder in the next few laps.
Less than 2 seconds between first place and fourth place, and of course any chance the drivers might have to try to economize on their fuel is out the window. They've got to race and race hard.
Who's going to win it now with just 4 laps to go? About anybody's choice. You consider it, you've got the Galmer chassis running 1 and 2, last year's Chevrolet engine. A Lola, last year's model, running with last year's Chevrolet engine, running in 3rd place. Brand new Penske, brand new Chevy engine, running in 4th place. They all perform just a little bit different. In some places, one will be stronger, in others, another will be. And now, Al Unser Jr. and the rest have to deal with traffic.
And yet, only 4 laps left, and look at these cars. They're virtually running just about the same speed, Paul. Look at that.
Danny Sullivan taking advantage of the traffic, comes inside Little Al. Little Al touches him. Little Al spins it. The 2 teammates get together. Little Al now tries to get the engine back under power. He tries to roll forward. The radio report, no doubt, will be coming to this man, Rick Gallus, as Little Al tries to come around. But there's very little time left. Danny Sullivan is out in front. Rahal is second. Fittipaldi is third.
And it's pretty clear that it was Danny Sullivan who touched Little Al's rear wheel there. So this is going to lead to recriminations within the team and a possibility for Rahal at the last minute.
And remember, the cars, Little Al was so long getting going because the turning radius on all these Indy cars just isn't very sharp. Not sharp enough for him to have gotten out of that little blockage that he was in there.
How devastating to come this close to his 5th victory here and have it taken away so savagely right at the last minute. Rahal on the attack. Sullivan very much back in IndyCar racing after a year.
And here comes Rahal coming to the inside. Little Al, by the way, dropped into 4th place when he finally got it back under power. But now Rahal sees his opportunity for 2 in a row. And he begins to charge at the back of Danny Sullivan's car.
There's no laps left. He's got to go for it. Time is running out. And Rahal is passing, has got to be at the end of the long straightaways. One of the 2 of them, the front one and the back one.
The engines in 1st and 2nd place are the same. The difference is in the chassis and certainly in the driver's skills, though they are both wonderfully well-matched competitors. Both of them Indianapolis 500 champions. Both of them PPG IndyCar champions.
Were Sullivan to hang on an all-new chassis, the Galmer chassis would win in just its 3rd race, an incredible achievement.
103 laps into the record book. Al Unser Jr.'s chance at a 5th straight victory go by the wayside when he taps with Danny Sullivan. But the question one must ask is, did in that tap any damage occur to Sullivan's car, which may manifest it here in the last laps?
I doubt it, but I think the pressure on Sullivan is now incredible, because if he loses this race to Rahal, he is going to be a very bad guy around the Gallus Craco team.
Well, he didn't do it intentionally.
No, of course
Sam,
he didn't.
I understand. Racing is very close.
The white flag comes out. There is just one more circuit to go, 1.59 miles. Danny Sullivan has the lead here. This is one of Rahal's chances. He doesn't take it as they go into the first turn. Now they will have to single file. Maury Cranes watches his car. Debbie Rahal keeps track of her husband. Now they move back, heading for Seaside. That is the last reasonable chance that Bobby Rahal will have. His objective will be to try to move to the inside at the end of this straight and outbreak Danny Sullivan going into the corner. Here is Rahal. He makes his move darting toward the inside. No. He can't get it done there. Very little opportunity now. It would be a remarkable maneuver if Rahal could get past. As Danny Sullivan heads for the final turn. And Danny Sullivan is now on the pit straight. Both of them coming up to speed. The checkered flag lies just ahead. And Danny Sullivan, facing the checkered flag, has taken the win for the Gallus Craco team. Danny Sullivan with his 16th career win. His first win since the finale in 1990 at Laguna Seca. A very tired man, a dirty helmet, and a dirty car. But it doesn't matter the way they appear in victory lane.
Racing gets hard right at the last. The cars are empty of fuel, really light, too light for good braking. Tires are all worn down pretty good. Those guys were trying so hard, Paul.
So Danny Sullivan takes the win. This was the decisive moment as Sullivan came down the inside. Now watch carefully. He's alongside Little Al. Little Al turned right across the front. Little Al still owned the racetrack at that point. Tapped the left front wing on Danny Sullivan's car, and Little Al's car got loose. He spun it, fell back to 4th place. Little Al's view, the same situation again, heading for that sharp right-hander at the end of Seaside. Now he's on the brakes. Danny Sullivan is coming to the inside. Little Al turns into the corner, and they touch. And the race is effectively over at that point. And Al Unser Jr.'s dream of 5 consecutive wins at this track ends as he slides to a stop just inches from the barrier. Across the line in second, Bobby Rahal, who made a valiant try in the last laps. Emerson Fittipaldi in third. Little Al in 4th place. Scott Goodyear came by in 5th. And Rick Mears stayed with it all day and came by in 6th. So Al Unser Jr. takes the win in the Toyota, or takes 4th in the Toyota Grand Prix as Danny Sullivan wins it. Well, we're running overtime here in the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. We're not going to have a chance to really talk to Danny Sullivan, who wins here. And we set the stage now for the Indianapolis 500-mile race as we look at the unofficial final results with a great finish for both Jim Vasser and Eric Bachelard. Next, with ABC Sports, we'll be on to the run for the pole at the Indianapolis 500. And then, of course, the race itself as our coverage of motor racing continues. I'm Paul Page. So long from Long Beach.
Paul, what's going on? Because he's telling me there.